For this presentation, I will be giving a brief summary on the life of Gottlob Frege. Afterwards, I will get into his philosophies and the influence they had. The last point of discussion in the presentation will be my own opinions on his philosophies and whether or not I agree. Gottlob Frege was born in Wismar, Mecklenburg-Schwerin in Germany in 1814. Frege studied at the grammar school in Wismar until 1869, which is when he graduated. He attended the University of Jena in the spring of the same year. In 1871, Frege continued his studies at Göttingen, which was the leading university in math. Later on, in 1873, Frege got his doctorate under Ernest Christian Julius Schwerin for a dissertation under the English title of On a Geometrical Representation of Imaginary Forms in a Plane. Frege married his wife on March 14, 1887, but his wife passed away during World War I. Frege had no children with his wife, but he did go on to adopt a son that would become an engineer. Gottlob Frege passed away at the age of 76 on July 26, 1925. Gottlob Frege had two main areas for his philosophies: logic and the philosophy of mathematics, and his philosophy of language. Logic and the philosophy of mathematics works on the borderline between the two interests. Since Frege was trained as a mathematician, his interest in logic grew from his interest in math. In 1879, Frege published his concept script. This was the first time a system of mathematical logic in the modern sense was presented. Gottlob Frege believed that the truths of math were logical, analytical truths that coincided with the ideas of Leibniz, but disagreed with Kant. Kant believed that mathematical knowledge was grounded in pure intuition. Frege's logicism was limited to math, and he did not believe that geometry was a branch of logic. Frege thought he could prove the truths of math deductively by a limited number of logic axioms. Axioms meaning a statement that is self-evidently true. One of Frege's biggest contributions to the philosophy of mathematics is his great arguments for his view. Along with Frege's logic and philosophy of math, he also had a philosophy of language. When pursuing his investigations into math and logic, Frege developed a philosophy of language. The fundamental part of this theory is that the meaning of the sentence, the thought it expresses, is a function of its structure. The thought of the sentence is not determined by the psychological state of the speaker, but by the logical inferences the sentence permits. The sentence meaning is prior to the word meaning. This means that the meanings of individual words are determined by what they contribute to the thoughts expressed by the sentences in which the words appear. Gottlob Frege's philosophy of language had a greater impact than his philosophy of math. Frege's paper, On Sense and Reference, that is not considered a classic, looked at two language puzzles. Frege noticed that in each case, one puzzle cannot account for the meaningfulness or logical behavior of certain sentences simply on the basis of the names and descriptions in said puzzle. One puzzle concerned identity statements, while the other concerned itself with subordinate clauses. To solve the two puzzles, Frege suggested that the terms of a language both have sense and detonation. Frege's theory of sentence meaning explains how it's possible for different people to understand the same thought, even though no two people associate the sentences with the exact same images or ideas. Gottlob Frege's work had a great impact. Frege's work in the philosophy of math and language were the beginning of modern logic due to his invention of the notation of quantifiers and variables. By doing this, Frege solved the problem that had confused the logicians of the Middle Ages. His work was important, but it was a lot more general than the area in which it was applied. Frege's work had been influential because he made the restricted part of philosophy basic to everyone else. John Austin's translation of Frege's work into English in 1950, the influence of Frege's writing among English-speaking philosophers was very great. Frege never had the last word on any topic, but there is hardly a question in contemporary philosophy that the examination didn't come from Frege's original views. Now, Gottlob Frege did have two main philosophies, logic and the philosophy of math, along with the philosophy of language. Personally, I disagree with his thoughts on the philosophy of language, and I agree with his thoughts on the logic and philosophy of math, at least for the most part. The reason I agree with the philosophy of math and logic is that his theory states that mathematical truths are objective and not subjective. I agree with this because no matter a person's opinion on the outcome of a mathematical equation, a person's opinion cannot change it. therefore making Frege's statement true. The mathematical truths are objective and not subjective. I disagree with Gottlob Frege's philosophy of language. I disagree with his philosophy of language because he believed that the meaning of individual words are determined by what they contribute to the thoughts expressed by the sentences in which the words appear. I disagree with this because even before a word is put into a sentence, it still has meaning. Having a word in a sentence may add to the sentence meaning, but it still doesn't take away the meaning of the word before it was in the sentence. Although there is one part of the philosophy of language that I do agree with. Frege also states that in theory, two people can understand the same thought even though they may not associate the sentence to the same image or idea. I agree with this part of the philosophy of language because I believe that it is possible for two people to understand a sentence without associating it to the same thing. Overall, Gottlob Frege had strong viewpoints on his philosophies, and whether we agreed or not, he still had a great impact on modern-day philosophers. Thank you for listening.